Hello everyone, my name is Ogunoiki Samuel and you're welcome to this YouTube channel. Especially if this is your first time, thank you so much for joining, and if you're a returning viewer, it's so great to have you. Thank you for coming back and God bless you. Remember to subscribe to the channel, to like this video and to share with your friends, especially if it blesses you one way or the other. So yeah, we're coming to the end of a 4-part series titled Falling in Love. So this is the 4th video. In the first video, we spoke about how I made some mistakes and I learned my lessons from them. In the second video, we spoke about falling in love with God, which was very paramount for me in my relationship life. I had made some mistakes, especially trying to walk without God. And then, I fell in love with God. I drew closer to God. Then I learned, to do things the right way. In the third one, we spoke about how I got into a relationship and how I, followed the right steps. And now we're going to talk about when exactly, should I embark on this falling in love process. 7 tips on when to fall in love. So number 1 is when you know what love is. When we look at 1 Corinthians chapter 13 from verses 4, we see some things about love. Love suffers long and is kind. Love does not envy. Love does not parade itself, is not puffed up, does not behave rudely, does not seek its own, is not provoked, thinks no evil, does not rejoice in iniquity, but rejoices in the truth, bears all things, believes all things, hopes all things, endures all things. Love never fails. Yeah, so before we even, decide to love someone or to embark on the process, we need to understand what love really is. And remember, we also said that love is God. And so it's very important that we know what it entails. We know what is going to take from us. We know what we have to give. We don't go into it blindly. And so when we have some understanding of what love is, then yeah, sure, we can go ahead and walk or fall in love with the person that we want to, or that we have decided to do this process with. The second thing is when you're emotionally stable. Now, this thing sometimes happens to us, that is, especially when you have a breakup, as we call it today, because you're emotionally vulnerable at that point. You seem to find solace and care in whoever comes close to you, offering you some form of affection. And in that instance, there's a tendency for you to like and quote unquote fall in love with that person. Yeah, so you should kind of have some emotional stability. Now, before I go ahead, I just want to mention that all these things are not absolute. These points are not absolute. They are just like suggestions and things that we should keep in mind when deciding how or when we go about liking or falling in love with somebody. So it's important that you have some form of emotional stability so that you're making decisions out of a good emotional standpoint, out of knowledge, and not based on the fact that you're just feeling one way or the other. You'll bear me witness that if, for instance, if someone comes at you and shouts at you, in a way that you do not like, or if someone comes and is very insultive and abusive to you, and if it happens to be that whatever that person says, gets to you in a way that hurts you, you will most likely be happy with the first person that comes at you and says, oh, you're wonderful, you're beautiful, you have no need to be scared, you're very awesome. I mean, you would like want to fall for that person. Now, that's not necessarily because of the things that person said, even though yes, that person said wonderful things, but it's also because of the fact that the person said those things when you were in a place of need, when you were in a place of emotional deficit. That is, you felt hurt, you felt down, you felt low, and so you are more vulnerable to that person because that person came to meet you at the quote unquote right time. Yeah, so when you're emotionally stable, so if you, for example, if you just suffered a break and there is a guy or a girl that is around you and that stuff, there's nothing wrong in you being friends with that person. In fact, that person may be the great and wonderful person for you, but it would be good for you to kind of like take a pause on things if things are going very fast, and try to be emotionally stable and reassess if you truly want to commit or walk in love with that person as in regards to romantic relationships or not. So yeah, be emotionally stable before you embark on a loving process. Number 3 is when you have a sense of who you are. Now, there's something that happens in relationships because it's a love affair. It has to do with affection. You're pouring your affection on someone. There is a tendency for you to make that person an idol, to make that person a god in your life, especially if you have not discovered who you are. When we look at Galatians chapter 2 verses 20, it makes us understand, I have been crucified with Christ. No longer I will live, but Christ lives in me, and the life which I now live in the flesh, I live by faith in the Son of God who loved me and gave himself for me. So having that understanding of the fact that I am no longer myself, I am not Christ, helps you to stand such that when things go wrong in that relationship, or when the person misbehaves or treats you in a way that you do not like, you are not emotionally downcast, you are not throttled, you are not beaten down. The truth is that we are human beings, and human beings are imperfect. So even when you're loving someone, you're loving another imperfect being, and that person has a tendency to hurt you. There's this saying that those who hurt you the most are those who are closest to you. And so if you build your life, if you build all your affection, if you shape all your meaning around someone else, and that person in the slightest way hurts you, you're going to fall off the mark. You're going to go so down because you've built your life around that person. And so before you fall in love or embark in the love process, it's important that you have an idea of who you are. When you look at 1 Peter chapter 2 verses 9, it says that, but you are a chosen generation, a royal priesthood, a holy nation, his own special people, that you may proclaim the praises of him who called you out of darkness into his marvelous light. That makes you have this sense of being, you feel special when you understand who you really are. And so don't go about liking or jumping into a relationship or falling in love with someone when you do not even know who you are. You end up building your meaning around that person. And that's why some people get into some form of abusive relationships, with all due respect to them. And the abuser takes advantage of the fact that they do not even know who they are. They do not know their self-worth, as we call it today. And so these guys are in a cycle. They are beaten, they make efforts to leave the relationship, and then the abuser comes at them and he says that, I'm sorry and whatnot, or he makes them feel like, you're nothing without me. And so they find themselves in a place where they are like, oh, I don't have any other option but this guy or this girl. This is all due to the fact that they probably, amongst other reasons, they probably do not have an understanding of who they truly are. Because if they knew who they were, they would understand that nobody has the right to, treat me in this certain way. Nobody has this command or control over my emotions, because I am who I am in Christ. And so it's very important that you know who you are before you like or fall in love with somebody. Just have that sense of knowing, have that sense of purpose of who you are. So number 4 is that you should have gained some ground over struggles, or gain, total ground over struggles. Again, now this is not absolute, but it is very important. When we say struggles, what we mean is things like, sexual addiction, anger issues, emotional struggles, insecurities. Now, this is very important. Let me start from something like anger. We hear of how people get into relationships now, and sometimes it turns out to be abusive. For example, a guy beating a girl, or even a girl just being very nasty and shouting or ranting at the guy. Now, sometimes this is due to the fact that these people have struggles that they've not yet dealt with. That is, for example, the guy has anger issues and he has not dealt with them. Now, this guy can be a quote-unquote good guy with seemingly good intentions, but cannot just control or has not learned to manage his anger issues. And so because of that, he pours it out on this, female, or on this person that is in a relationship with. Now, this is not to justify anger or people who are abusive. Rather, this is to point to the fact that, these things have to be dealt with even before you fall in love or get into a relationship. Another example is insecurities. If I'm insecure about certain things and I'm starting to notice it already, it's not going to get any less when I'm in a relationship with someone or when I'm falling in love with someone. The truth is that when you get into a relationship, it heightens these things. It makes it more visible. It makes it clearer that you have these issues. Now, let's talk about sexual struggles. If you get into a relationship with a girl and, for example, you're battling with a pornography addiction, or you're, actually having a sexual addiction, and you've not taken out time to, deal with that or get on a process to sorting that out, you realize that, when you get into that relationship, these things hiding. Why? Because you're going to be dealing with some hormones. Your hormones will be, some sexual hormones will be elevated, especially in times when you feel a certain way with that person, or you find yourselves in certain positions, be it that you're excited about something, or even that you feel vulnerable or downcast about something. My point is, your emotions and your hormones that will promote your sexual urges will be elevated. Now, if you're someone who is still battling with that struggle, or you've not gained some ground over that thing, you realize that in those times of emotional, vulnerability, you have a tendency to go and do those things that you don't want to do. For example, you have a tendency to go and watch pornography, or you have a tendency to start making sexual advances to that, your partner. Now, imagine a scenario where two people who are battling with sexual addiction are yet to deal with it, in some way, or begin a process of, recovery in that light, and they come together in a relationship. Now, A says something to B that makes her feel a special way, and B touches A on his arms and makes him feel in a very special way. You realize that not long after, they may find themselves in a place where they have compromised or falling sexually. And so it's very important that you gain some form of ground, in your sexual purity or in your struggles generally, be it anger issues, insecurities, sexual struggles, before you even consider or before you embark on a relationship with somebody. Now remember, these things are not absolute, but they are just steps that will guide, us to working well in our love relationship. So before you fall in love, try to gain some ground over your struggles. Number 5 is when you're ready to live beyond yourself. Falling in love with somebody will require that you give something to that person, be it your emotions, time, love, affection, efforts, energy. And so you must be willing and ready to not only live for yourself, to not only cater for yourself or your needs, but also cater for that person. Now, this does not mean that you'll be a sole provider for that person, but this is just to say that you must be willing to share your life and parts of you with that person. So it's not only going to be about how you want things to be done. It's not only going to be about your own way. It's not only going to be about your own thoughts and whatever it is that you want to do, but it's also going to be about that person. It's not only going to be about your own plans and ambitions, but it's also going to be about that person. And so when you're ready to live beyond yourself and to also look after someone else, after how they feel, after things that they want, that's when you can say that, yeah, I want to fall in love with this person because I'm ready to not only provide for me or not only look after me, but also look after this person in different ways, be it emotional, finance, and other things. Number 6 is when you're ready to get married. Now, this sounds very funny, and remember, these things are not absolute. I once read an article, when I was, trying to get into a relationship and all that stuff. And the article was titled, Wait to Date Until You Can Marry. Wait to Date Until You Can Marry. And it made so much sense. The truth is that when you, start a love relationship with someone, it's going to awaken a lot of things. It's going to put you in a lot of positions that if you're not ready to get married, you may find yourself where you do not want to be. There's this passage that says that do not awaken love until it pleases. Now, that may be talking about romantic love and affection, but it's very much similar to this. Until you're ready to, commit yourself to somebody, to get married to that person, sometimes even until you're ready to or old enough to get married or, financially capable to get married, you may not want to start the love process because it's going to, start a cascade of you, drawing closer to that person, be it physically, emotionally. It's going to demand some things from you, like your finance, which you may not be able to give at that point in time. It's going to demand some emotional maturity, which you may not be able to give if you're not ready. And as you go on in the relationship, you're going to get more and more physically attracted to the person, and you do not want to commit to each other sexually until you're married. So sometimes it may be best for you to actually hold on and wait to date or wait to fall in love until you're ready to get married. And even if you may not be ready to get married, I mean, like old enough, financially independent, emotionally independent, but at least have that sense of readiness that, okay, I'm embarking on this journey with the aim to get married to this person. Have that sense of, okay, I want to get married. Maybe not now, maybe in 2 years' time, maybe in 3 years' time, but I want to get married in so time, and so I'm embarking on this journey so that it will help me get to that place or that destination that I'm seeking. And so until you're ready to get married, or when you're ready to get married, yes, you can then say that, yeah, I want to fall in love. I want to start this relationship with this person. And number 7, which is the final one, is when God gives you a go ahead. So far in this journey of falling in love, we've been talking about, even though we spoke about falling in love with God, we've been talking more about practical steps, about, things that have to do with you as it pertains to falling in love with someone. But to conclude this is this very important thing, which is when God gives a go ahead. The truth is, you can, tick all the steps, tick all the boxes, get a mentor, pray about it, discover yourself and all these things, find someone who aligns with you, who aligns with your purpose, who's wonderful in many ways, and seems to fit all your checklist about the person that you want to be with, and still not get God's blessings over that thing. What do I mean? You can have the perfect person, quote and unquote, and still not be the person for you. So wait until God gives you a go ahead for that person. It's not by what you see, it's by what God sees. Some people may look perfect for each other, but they are not, because that's not God's plan for them. And so wait until God gives you that go ahead. The Bible makes us understand that you finds a wife finds a good thing. And the Bible also makes us understand that a good wife is a gift from the Lord. That means, God has a role to play in helping you choosing that person that you want to be with, choosing that person that you want to fall in love with, choosing that person that you want to get married to. So even after you have embarked on all the processes, after you've read all the books, after you've applied all the wisdom principles, be sure that you seek God's counsel before you fall in love with that person. And so when God gives you a go ahead to go on in that relationship, you can then go ahead with it. The truth is, when you embark on that love process, there will be trying times, and you will need to look back to words that would, give you conviction. You need to look back to times when God gave you instructions that you should go ahead with that person. If those things are not there, if that foundation is not there, if that, assurance or that go ahead from God is not there, you may find yourself in a place where you begin to doubt and you want to let go of that person. But when you have that conviction, when you have that go ahead from God, you can always look back to Him and say, God, you said this. God, you said that. And remember, it has to do with how God speaks to you. It has to do with how God speaks to me. And so that's why it's very important, before you even embark on, falling in love with someone or trying to get married to someone, it's very important that you understand how God speaks to you in the first place. It's not everyone that God will come and say in their ear, my son, this is the way you should go. It's not everyone who will hear an audible voice. Some, for them, it's a witness in the heart. Some, it's a strong thought. Some, it's just a very strong conviction. And of course, some, it's a loud voice. Some, it's even a dream. Point is, it's very important for you to understand how God speaks to you, so that you can then use that as a foundation of making a decision. If this video has blessed you in any way, remember to like, to subscribe, and to share with your friends. I pray that we'll all experience blissful and wonderful relationships, and I pray that our relationships will only reflect God's relationship with the church and how much He loves us. God bless you, and have a wonderful time.